28. That is the number of animals that were loaded into transport crates in 1980 and flown into a valley in Canada's Northwest Territories that had not held a single wild wood bison in over a century. I accepted that number as a symbol of ambition, a small, brave wager against extinction. Then I started pulling the archival record on what actually happened in that valley, and what happened in the decade before the airlift, and what the government's own risk assessments said at the time. And once I did, I found something that doesn't fit the story we've been told. The biological models they built failed. The range projections they published failed. And the landscape itself responded in a manner that the scientific literature, as recently as 2022, still hedges carefully around, because the mechanism isn't fully understood. There is a river in the Northwest Territories that government researchers designated a hard barrier in their 1980 projections, a boundary the bison were not expected to cross. Hold that detail, we will return to it. Because before we get to what those animals did to that valley, and what that valley reveals about everything we thought we understood about ecological restoration, you need to understand what was actually at stake in 1957, when a government aerial survey spotted something in the boreal forest that, according to every prior official record, could not exist. In 1940, the Canadian government declared the wood bison functionally extinct. That declaration was not a guess. It was a formal administrative conclusion entered into the official record after surveys found no evidence of a surviving pure stock population anywhere in the animal's historic range. 17 years later, a low-altitude aerial survey over a remote section of boreal forest found a herd of several hundred wood bison that nobody knew was there. They were healthy, they were genetically pure, and they were exactly where the models said survival wasn't possible. The question the 1957 discovery raises, and that the recovery literature tends to move past quickly, is not why the herd survived. The question is why the environment that sustained them was never identified as viable in the first place. If you're finding this investigation worth your time, consider subscribing. This series follows the evidence to wherever the official record stops. 3 agencies, independent methodologies, no shared projection framework. All 3 wrong in the same direction. The bison didn't slowly fill the designated release area and stop at the boundaries the maps assigned them. They crossed the river. They moved faster than any optimistic scenario projected. And when I set the 1980 range maps beside the satellite movement data from the 1990s, what I'm looking at is not a biological surprise. It's a control assumption that the animals simply ignored. The wallows came back. That requires some explanation. A wallow is a depression carved into soft ground by a bison rolling its body, a behavior that looks incidental but functions as infrastructure. Dormant wallow depressions had persisted in the soil for a century, holding their shape with nothing to reactivate them. The aerial vegetation scans from the years following the bison's range expansion show those depressions filling with water again. Amphibian communities, insect populations absent from living memory. A 2022 PNAS prairie study documents this cascade mechanism in functional detail. The bison didn't adapt to the landscape. The landscape resumed. The Denanau First Nation kept the word. Through 100 years in which the official record registered the wood bison's absence as total, through the 1940 Extinction Declaration, through the decades of silence before the 1957 rediscovery, the linguistic record shows the name for the animal remained in active use, not preserved as an artifact. Used, that is not a small distinction. A word kept alive in a living language is not nostalgia, it is a knowledge claim. If these patterns are raising questions you haven't encountered elsewhere, consider sharing this investigation. The deeper this scrutiny reaches, the harder the official silence becomes to maintain. The institutional record treated the Denanau connection as administrative convenience, a detail to acknowledge in the recovery narrative's final paragraph. The linguistic evidence suggests something the official history has never formally entered, that the absence was only ever absence on paper. The pattern is consistent enough now that I can no longer call it error. An extinction declaration that was wrong, a survival environment invisible to the surveys designed to find it, 3 independent models, all failing in the same direction, wallows the soil never filled in, a word kept alive for something the record said was gone. I don't have the answer, I want to be honest about that. If this investigation has been worth your time, leave your thoughts below. The next video starts with a survey report that has never been publicly indexed. 28 animals, and everything the models said would hold them.